is The Real Estate Dweller with Miguel Pagán, the podcast that's all about real estate. For more than 2 decades, Miguel Pagán has been at the forefront of change in real estate. This podcast will help you navigate through the ever-changing landscape of real estate. Now, here is your host, Miguel Pagán.
Hello everyone, Miguel Pagán here, welcoming you to our very first episode of our brand new podcast, The Real Estate Dweller. I'm excited to be here. This podcast has been in the making for a little while, but I'm happy to say that the time has come and it is now. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Miguel Pagán with William Ravis Real Estate, and I have been a real estate agent since 1998. Now, I work primarily in the Fairfield and New Haven counties here in Connecticut. Now, what I wanted to do for our very first episode was to give you a very simple explanation or an introduction to our podcast. I want to give you 2 whys and a how. First of all, why the name, The Real Estate Dweller? I have to confess, I didn't come up with it. A friend of mine suggested it. And when I first heard the name, The Real Estate Dweller, I wasn't really fond of that name. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it made sense. Because you see, that's what I've been doing. That word dweller means someone that takes occupancy of something. And I've been in the real estate business since 1998, and all I've been doing is eating, sleeping, and drinking this business that we call real estate in one form or another. Now, I felt that I had the knowledge, I felt that I had the experience, but a couple of years ago, something changed. How would I describe it? Well, I'll describe it this way. Who moved my cheese? If you never read that book, great read, by the way. And what I mean by that is, a couple of years back, my staff and I realized that some of the communication that we were utilizing with our clients was not giving us a good return. What I mean by that is we were sending out the letters, sending out the emails, making all the phone calls, but we were hearing crickets. So what had changed? Well, basically, social media turned real estate on its ear. And we decided that we needed to make a change. The cheese had moved, and we needed to make a quick change. And that's when we launched our social media strategy. And this podcast is an extension of that strategy. So why a podcast? Especially when you consider the fact that a study or a survey was done in 2020, in January of 2020, and what they highlighted was that there are actually over 850,000 active podcasts in the United States. Now, if you think of that number and you think it's staggering, think of this. There are over 30 million podcast episodes available for our consumption, for my consumption and your consumption as the consumer. So what am I saying? Well, podcasting has become mainstream. 70% of the U.S. population is now aware of what a podcast actually is. Where in the past, if you use that expression, people looked at you like you had 2 heads, like, what's a podcast? Another survey was done in 2019, and that one highlighted that over 51% of the consumers above the age of 12 were actually listening to podcasts. That's a staggering figure when you take into account that the population in the United States is 328 million individuals. And that number is rising rapidly. Now, how is this content being consumed? Well, 65% of podcast listeners are using their smartphones or their tablets. Now, you're probably thinking, who cares, Miguel? What's in it for me? Why should I listen to your podcast? Because so far I gave you 2 powerful reasons as to why we should have a podcast, but all those reasons are totally self-serving. So why should you as the consumer tune in to The Real Estate Dweller? That's the question. So I'll answer that question by posing another question. Why do people listen to podcasts? Well, here's another study that showed that 3 out of every 4 podcast listeners in the United States said that they tuned into a podcast for one reason and one reason only, to learn something new. So that's our goal That's the objective here at the Real Estate Dweller. We want to bring you something of value every single week. So before we came on the air, I went online and I did a little bit of research because I was concerned. Am I going to run out of content if I do a podcast every single week? And I'm glad to tell you that no, we won't. So I did a little bit of research and I came up with a list of over 100 different topics. Now, don't be concerned. I'm not going to try to share all 100 of them with you, but I'll share just a couple of them. How about market conditions? If you're a seller and you live in a specified area, don't you want to know the values around your neighborhood? So that's a great topic or great content to go over. How about if we interview a buyer and we look at the buying process from the perspective of the buyer? The same thing can be applied to a seller. How about our customer philosophy? How about the home buying process or the home selling process? Well, you get the picture. The list is endless. We could go on and on and on. But not only that, we're bringing in market leaders or top producers in the real estate world. So not only are you getting my perspective, but you're getting the perspective from those top producers as sellers and buyers. Now, we invite you to tune in next week. Listen to the first episode that we're bringing to you. How to purchase a home without bankrupting your future. Now, how are we going to accomplish that? We're going to bring in a mortgage lender and we're going to do a deep dive into some safety valves that we can put in place so that when you purchase your first home, you're not going into the poorhouse. So we invite you to tune in. We want to thank Conspire Visuals for handling our video and our audio. Look for us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Don't forget to follow and subscribe or like so you don't miss any of our upcoming content. Or go directly to our website at www.miguelpaganre.com. So we look forward to next week. We look forward to seeing you again. And that's goodbye for now.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Real Estate Dweller with Miguel Pagán. For all of your real estate needs, contact Miguel Pagán at William Ravis Real Estate, 203-650-0151. Join us again next week for The Real Estate Dweller and let Miguel's 22 years of experience work for you. If it's about real estate, it's all here with The Real Estate Dweller with Miguel Pagán. The opinions expressed are those of Miguel Pagán and his guest, not those of his company or any affiliates.